The morning my son called to say his wife was pregnant with their third, I cried in the kitchen with the phone pressed against my chest. Happy tears. The kind that surprise you. I was 63 years old, retired from 26 years of bookkeeping, living alone in the house where I'd raised him, and I thought, finally, I get to be the grandmother I always imagined I'd be. That was the beginning. I just didn't know what I was agreeing to. His name is my son, his wife. I'll call her my daughter-in-law because that's what she is. And that's about as far as the warmth goes. They had 2 kids already, ages 4 and 7. My son worked long hours at a distribution company about 40 minutes from their house. My daughter-in-law worked part-time at a dental office, 3 days a week, Tuesday through Thursday. The other days she was home. I visited when I could. Every other Sunday, sometimes more. I brought food, the kind my son grew up on, pot roast and apple cake, and I sat on the floor with the grandkids and read picture books until my back ached. I loved those days. I drove home tired in the good way, full. Then the third baby came and everything shifted. It started small, the way these things always do. My daughter-in-law called me on a Wednesday afternoon in early March. The baby was 6 weeks old. She said she was exhausted, said she hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since the birth. I believed her. I remembered that feeling, that particular fog. I told her I'd come Friday and stay through Sunday, give her a break. I drove 2 hours each way. I held the baby. I chased the older two. I made lunches and ran the dishwasher and sorted laundry. My daughter-in-law disappeared into the bedroom by 8 o'clock Friday night and didn't come out until Saturday afternoon. I didn't say a word. I understood. A new baby is hard. But then she called again the following Wednesday. Could I come again the following Wednesday? Could I come again this weekend? And the one after? I came. Of course I came. I'm his mother. They're my grandchildren. What was I going to say? By May, I was driving up every single weekend. Friday night through Sunday evening, 68 miles each way. And the nature of the visits had changed in a way I couldn't quite name at first, only feel. I was no longer a grandmother who visited. I was staff. No one said it like that. No one had to. It was in the way my daughter-in-law handed me the baby, the moment I walked through the door before I'd taken off my coat, before I'd set down my bag. It was in the way my son greeted me from the couch, already watching television, with a nod. It was in the way the grocery list appeared on the kitchen counter every Friday. And it was assumed, never asked, never discussed, that I would handle it. The 7-year-old, my oldest grandchild, started calling me the helper. I don't know where he picked that up. I told myself it was innocent. Children absorb the atmosphere of a house like a sponge. I am a patient woman. I raised my son on my own after his father left when the boy was 9. I worked full-time and kept the house and helped with homework and never once made him feel like a burden. Patience is not something I have to practice. It's what I am made of. But patience, I have learned, can be mistaken for something else. It can look from the outside like acceptance, like consent. The first time I felt the sting, really felt it, was a Sunday in June. I had been there since Friday. I had handled the baby through 2 nights, so my daughter-in-law could sleep. I'd taken the older kids to the park Saturday morning, made everyone breakfast both days, folded 3 loads of laundry, and cleaned the bathroom because no one else was going to. Sunday afternoon, my son suggested they go out to dinner. Just the 2 of them. A date night, he said. Good for their marriage. I said, of course, go. I'll be here with the kids. They came home at 10 o'clock. My daughter-in-law walked in, glanced at the baby's monitor I'd been holding for 3 hours, and said, "Did she eat at 7? She looked a little fussy in the photos." Not, "Thank you." Not, "How are you holding up?" Not even a hello. I said, "Yes, she ate at 7. My daughter-in-law said, "Okay," and went upstairs. My son patted my shoulder. "Thanks, Mom," like I'd passed him the salt. I drove home that night at 11 p.m., 2 hours in the dark, and I kept the radio off the whole way. I needed to think. Or maybe I needed to not think. I'm still not sure which. By August, the weekends were no longer enough. My daughter in law called me on a Tuesday, her day off, and said she needed me to come Thursday. She had a dentist appointment. I said I had a doctor's appointment Thursday morning myself. She paused. Then she said, "Can you reschedule it?" I did. I don't know why I did that. My own doctor's appointment for a follow-up I'd been waiting 6 weeks for, and I rescheduled it for her dentist cleaning. I drove up Thursday. She left for the dentist at 10. She came home at 4:30. 6.5 hours for a cleaning. I didn't ask. I made dinner. That was August. In September, my son called me with a proposal. He used that word, proposal, like it was a business arrangement. He said they'd been talking, he and his wife, and they thought it made more sense for me to just move in, save me the driving, save them the uncertainty. The baby needed consistency, he said. The older kids were acting out. It would be good for everyone. He paused in a way that expected agreement. I asked what that would look like. My living arrangements, my space, my life. He said they had the finished basement. A private entrance, practically. A bathroom down there, a bedroom. I could set it up however I liked. The basement. After 63 years of my own home. I said I needed to think about it. I thought about it for 3 weeks. I thought about it for 3 weeks. I thought about the drive, which was becoming harder on my knees and my eyes at night. I thought about being closer to the grandchildren, watching them grow up week by week instead of just on weekends. I thought about my son's voice on the phone, which had sounded underneath the practicality a little like the 9-year-old boy who used to call me from his room at night to say he couldn't sleep. I said yes. I put my house, the one I'd owned for 31 years, on the market. It sold in 3 weeks in a strong market. I took the profit, paid off a small remaining debt, and moved what I could fit into the basement of my son's house on a Saturday in late October. I want you to feel the weight of that sentence. Not the furniture, not the boxes, the decision itself, the giving up of a thing I had no way to take back. My daughter-in-law did not come downstairs once while I was moving in. She said she had a migraine. The first month was manageable. I told myself that adjustment takes time. I made myself useful without making myself invisible, or I tried to. I watched the baby on the days my daughter-in-law worked. I did school pickup for the older two when it was raining. I cooked dinner 3 or 4 nights a week because I liked to cook, and because it felt like contributing. But there was a shift happening, so gradual I almost didn't notice it. By December, I was cooking dinner every night. By January, I was also packing the school lunches and handling the baby's overnight wake-ups because the exhaustion is affecting my daughter-in-law's work performance. That's how my son said it. Like a memo. My son, who was home by 6 every evening and asleep by 10. I stopped asking where I fit into the equation. The answer was obvious. I was the bottom of it, the part that held everything else up. One evening in February, I came upstairs to find my daughter-in-law on the phone with her mother, laughing. Her mother lives in Florida, visits twice a year, gets greeted at the airport with balloons and a handmade sign from the kids. I have never once gotten a handmade sign. I live in the basement. I went back downstairs, and I sat on the edge of my bed, the bed I had brought from my own house that my mother had given me when I married, and I looked at the ceiling, which was low, and I thought, I sold my house for this. I didn't cry. I'm not sure why. Maybe I had already understood this somewhere, and the crying had already happened without my knowing it. March came, and with it, the moment that I come back to now, when I need to remember why I left. My daughter-in-law's sister was visiting from out of town. A long weekend. The sister had a friend with her. They slept in the guest room, the room on the main floor, the room with the window that faces the garden. There was talk about dinners and outings and wine on the back porch. I made myself scarce, which I'm good at. On Saturday morning, I came upstairs at 7 to start breakfast. The 2 older kids needed to eat before soccer practice. I was scrambling eggs when my daughter-in-law came into the kitchen. She told me in a voice she uses for the kids when she's trying not to raise it, that her sister and the friend needed the basement for the rest of the weekend. I stood there with the spatula. She said there wasn't enough room upstairs for everyone. She said I could sleep on the air mattress in the baby's room. I asked her to say that again. She repeated it. The air mattress. The baby's room. Just for 2 nights, she said, as though 2 nights was a small thing, as though the basement wasn't where I lived, as though I was a piece of furniture she needed to relocate. I set the spatula down on the counter. I did not say anything. Not then. I went downstairs. I looked at my room. My things, my books, the photograph of my son at 9 years old that I kept on the nightstand, the quilt my mother made. I sat down in the chair I had hauled down 3 flights of moving stairs. The good armchair, the one I had been reading in for 20 years. And I thought, who am I in this house? Not a grandmother, not a mother, not a person with a name and a history and 63 years of a life that existed before any of them. I was the help. I picked up my phone and I called my friend, the one who has known me since we were in our 30s, who drove 2 hours to sit with me the week my ex-husband left, who tells me the truth even when I don't ask. I told her what had happened. I told her all of it, not just the air mattress, but the 8 months of invisible labor, the sold house, the basement, the way my son nodded at me from the couch. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know what you need to do." I did know. I had known for a while. I just hadn't let myself know it fully. That afternoon, I called my friend back and asked if I could stay with her for a few weeks while I figured things out. She said she'd already made up the guest room. I packed 2 bags that evening. Not everything, just what I needed. My medications, my good clothes, the quilt, the photograph. I wrote a note, not a long one. I left it on the kitchen counter where the grocery lists always appeared. I did not tell anyone I was leaving. I did not stage a confrontation. I did not list every grievance or explain every way I had been diminished. I have known women who did that, who tried to make their children understand through argument and tears, and I have watched them be told they were overreacting, that they were too sensitive, that they didn't understand how hard this stage of life was for the parents of young children. I was not going to give anyone the opportunity to tell me I was wrong about my own experience. I left on a Sunday morning early before the house was awake. I drove to my friend's house with the windows down even though it was cold. I turned the radio on loud. Something old, something from when I was young, before I was someone's mother or someone's helper or someone's convenience. I sang along, badly, and I didn't care. My son called that evening, then twice more. Then my daughter-in-law called, which surprised me. Her voice was different than I expected. Not angry, more alarmed. She said they didn't know where I was. I said I was safe. I said I needed some time. She said, "But what are we supposed to do about?" And then she stopped herself. I waited. She didn't finish the sentence. We both knew how it ended. I stayed with my friend. For 3 weeks, I slept in a real guest room with a window that got morning light. I drank coffee slowly. I went for walks. I read books I had been meaning to read for 2 years. I cooked dinner when I felt like it and ate cereal when I didn't. I made an appointment with a real estate agent, not to look urgently, not to panic, just to understand what was possible. I had the money from my house. I had my retirement. I was not destitute. I was not helpless. I had simply made a decision based on love and trust, and the decision had been taken advantage of, and now I was going to make a different one. My son came to see me after 10 days. He sat across from me at my friend's kitchen table, and he looked tired in a way that made me feel something, though I wasn't ready to call it forgiveness. He said he was sorry. He said he hadn't realized. He said my daughter-in-law was struggling and he had leaned on me too hard without seeing it from my side. I listened. I appreciated it. I told him that. I also told him that I would not be moving back into the basement, that I loved his children and I wanted to be part of their lives, but that I was a person, not a resource. That I had learned at 63 years old that being needed and being valued are not the same thing. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I know, Mom. I'm sorry. I found a one-bedroom apartment 20 minutes from their house. Small, clean, with a balcony that faces west, so I get the late afternoon light. I moved in on a Thursday in April. I hung my own curtains. I arranged my kitchen the way I like it. I put the photograph of my 9-year-old son on a shelf where I can see it from the couch. I see the grandchildren every other week, on my terms, for as long as feels right. I take them to the park. I read picture books on the floor until my back aches. I drive home tired in the good way. The oldest one doesn't call me the helper anymore. He calls me Grandma, the way he always should have. The way I always was, even when no one was treating me like it. Some things you have to walk away from before they can see you clearly. Some doors you have to close yourself before someone closes them on you. I didn't leave angry. I left quietly, early on a Sunday morning, with a quilt and a photograph and 63 years of knowing who I am. That turned out to be enough, more than enough. It was everything.